10 a.m. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, for taking the time to join us for our session today. So I understand, everyone is busy and, a lot of us are working from home as well. So we really appreciate that you're able to take some time to join us today. And today our topic would be, today our topic is managing mental well-being in the workplace. So this is quite, I would say, a relevant topic, especially during this time, pandemic situation. A lot of people are having a lot of difficulties and problems. A lot of us are working from home, and it can be quite a challenge to really understand how our team is doing. And here we are as leaders, and as well as colleagues. We have our colleagues who are working from home and facing all kinds of challenges at this time. So it is good for us to really understand what they're going through. And as leaders, we also do have some responsibility to guide them and to support our team and our colleagues the best that we can. So allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Muhammad Hafiz Nozan. So Dr. Hafiz is currently a psychiatrist in Hospital Kuala Lumpur, working under the Department of Psychiatric and Mental Health. He is a qualified psychiatrist with over 10 years of working experience in the psychiatric field. He also has experience with effectively treating a wide range of psychiatric conditions, such as schizophrenia, major depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety disorders. Dr. Hafiz has also been invited as a speaker and moderator for numerous events related to psychiatry and mental health topics. He was also a key contributor to the first edition 2021 post-COVID-19 management protocols under the Medical Development Division, Ministry of Health, Malaysia. So, before passing it on to Dr. Hafiz, my name is Hari. I'll be your host for today. And along with my co-host, Haziq, we'll be here to assist you with any technical difficulties that you have. So do drop us a private message on the chat box if you have any difficulties or any technical issues, and we will help you the best that we can. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Dr. Hafiz Nozan.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Hari, our moderator today. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all of you, Mr. Hari, Mr. Hari's team, and managers that are going to be our audience today. I think as introduced by Mr. Hari, my name is Dr. Muhammad Hafiz. I'm a psychiatrist currently working in HKL. So I was approached by Dale Carnegie team, I think a few weeks ago, to talk about this topic, which I think quite important, and given the current situation with the COVID pandemic, the prolonged PKP, work from home. So I guess a lot of us, even if we read the news, the recent news, a lot of staff, not only I think in a private sector, but also public sector, actually, affected seriously, but adversely also because of the current situation. So hopefully today's my presentation today will at least empower all of you with some new knowledge, perhaps strengthening the old knowledge, so that we can be a better manager or a better leader. So can I start the presentation, Mr. Hari?
Yep, sure. Go ahead, doctor. Thanks.
All right. So I take the floor from now.
Yep. You can go ahead and share screen for your slides. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, let me. All right. Okay. I hope everyone can see this slide.
Yep, we can see. Yep. Thanks.
So without wasting time, so the title, as mentioned by the moderator, will be managing mental well-being in workplace, and how us as a manager can work proactively in helping our affected colleague or staff. So the outline of my presentation today would be, all right, first we will look into the definition of some terms you guys might heard before, might be already familiar, or you might never heard before. So we learn about that, and then I'll share with you some current statistics, related to our topic today, and then some literature review that I did for the purpose of this presentation. And then, of course, we will learn about what are the common psychological issues at workplace affecting the staff, as I mentioned earlier, whether in the public sector or private sector. And then we will learn how, as a manager, we can effectively help this affected colleague and subordinate, and how us as a manager and leader, how can we improve, how to improve ourselves to become a better superior. And of course, we will end our session today with some Q&A session. I will be taking questions, and to the best of my ability, I'll try to answer it. Okay, now let's learn some of the definitions and some terms. Okay, the word mental well-being. When Dale Carnegie approached me a few weeks ago, I noticed in the title, actually the title I took straight from them. So there's the word mental well-being. So I never used that kind of term before in psychiatric, so I Googled it myself. I found some different definition, but I opted to take this definition from an NGO organization called based in UK. They define mental well-being as your thought or our thought and feeling, and how we cope with the ups and downs of our everyday life. It's quite simple, but I think it's very meaningful. Okay, so that's the first term, the mental well-being. And then, okay, this one is I'm familiar better, the word mental health. Okay, I use the definition by WHO, the World Health Organization. So WHO defines mental health as a state of well-being in which individual realize his or her own ability, can cope with the stress of a daily normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to contribute to his or her community. Okay, how about health? So health is a state, is defined again by WHO as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. I think same like you guys, before I venture into medical school, before I learn about this definition, I thought being healthy is just, you don't have any illness, you don't have sickness, then you are healthy. But then health means more than that. And I believe this definition by WHO really captured the whole essence of, important essence to consider ourselves as having a good health. Okay, now this is a very familiar word, but definition again varies depending on which sources you look at. So I decided to take definition from a group called mentalhealth.uk. So they define stress as a feeling of being overwhelmed and unable to cope with mental or emotional pressure. All right, so I think this is the last one. The definition of occupational stress, and this definition is by WHO in their guideline published back in 1999. Occupational stress is defined as harmful physical and emotional responses of the worker when the requirement of the job do not match his or her capabilities, resources, or needs. Okay, so quick question. Is stress good or bad? I'm sure some of you will say stress is, probably majority will say stress is bad. Some say, no, it could be good. Some say it might be both. So the answer is actually depend, or actually depend which level of stress. Now, in the next slide, I explain it better. Okay, as you can see here, this is a graph called the Yerkes-Dodson law. This is the graph that shows the correlation between levels of performance and level of stress. As you can see clearly in this graph, in order for you to achieve your peak performance, you need a dose of stress. In this graph, is called optimal stress. As you can see, as the stress building up from low level all the way to the optimal, the performance go up. But once the stress goes beyond that, then the performance of that person will start dropping. Okay, so there's a good stress and there's a bad stress. Okay, let's look into the current statistic related to our topic today that I managed to find recently. Okay, so based on study by Kasim from UKM published back in 2018, So his group managed to find out that the most stressful job in Malaysia. So out of thousands types of jobs, so the most stressful one, the top 5, the number 1 would be primary school teacher with rates of up to 71.7%, and then secondary school teacher also is there, and the other occupation that is non-teacher, as you can see, would be the correctional officer, the policeman, and the academician from the university. And how about the private sector? So a study by INFA, published back in 2010, I know it's quite old, 10 years ago. They found out that out of 120 participants that they interviewed in their study, 50% expressed or showed high level of stress. Okay, so what are the factors that contribute to this state of psychological or emotional distress among employees, or we call it occupational stressor? All right. Based on the study by Nordin and gang, and team, published back in 2016, they found out various factors that contribute to developments of psychological distress. I'm just going to name a few. For example, unrealistic objective by the superior, the pressure from the deadline, long working hours, excessive workloads, lack of support from co-workers and superior. All these numbers of factors in a way contribute to the increased level of stress that, as shown in the previous graph, if the stress go way beyond, the performance no longer peaking but dropping. Okay, not to forget about you guys as the audience and as the manager. So we also, as a leader, I myself is a manager in my team. I have a team of 3 doctors that encompass of colleague of mine, another pakar, medical officer, house officer. I also have to take care of them, make sure they have a good well-being also in this department, make sure they can perform, make sure their performance is okay and not not going out. So basically, as a manager, again, based on the study by Manshor, published back in 2003, when they interviewed almost 400 managers from various international companies, they found out that a huge number of them express or having a significant level of stress, and as you can see, the factor that make the manager stress out is no different than those who experienced by the employee or our subordinate, factors such as high workload, working condition, and poor relationship at work. Okay, now we go into common psychological issue at workplace. I chose, the most famous one, the most common one. Okay, the first would be psychological distress. Okay, psychological distress is not a psychiatric condition. Basically it's more towards descriptions of a condition. So it can happen to any of us. Especially when we're facing adversity, we're facing huge challenges in our life, whether it's in our daily life or in our occupational life. So when we start unable or start feeling stressed out, having all these kind of problems, so we will slowly but gradually will be psychologically affected, and the symptoms, the sign and symptom that might support that we actually are having psychological distress, as you can see in the screen, symptoms such as we feel overwhelmed, we feel helpless and hopeless, and sometimes we feel that difficult to no longer able to keep up with our tasks. We used to be effective, but then since we are distressed, we feel that our work rate has reduced, and then we are easily fatigued, we cannot focus, and then sometimes we feel that our motivation levels to do work also going down, and then we turn out, we become easily irritable, we lash out at our subordinate, we lash out at our colleague, for trivial stuff. And of course, sometimes for those young affected even more, I guess they start isolating themselves from their bosses, from their co-workers. Okay, so if you see any of your co-workers or subordinates showing these kind of symptoms, probably they are having psychological distress at this moment. Okay, so what are the factors that can predict emergence of psychological distress, or the risk factor? So based on the recent study by Fojo, published back in 2020, just last year, as you can see, more or less the same theme repeated again and again. Factors such as high workload, job dissatisfaction, lack of resilience, harassment, and made worse if, let's say, that person had practicing unhealthy lifestyle, no exercise, binging all sort of unhealthy food. And then even worse, if they are coping with substance, they smoke a lot, they take alcohol more than usual, they've been using illicit drug. So this, can, but not only that, this can escalate and perpetuate the psychological distress condition. Okay, so second most common one, I think burnout. I mean, I have to say we see it clearly now among our frontliners, whether it could be a policeman, it could be a frontliner like nurses, doctors, because of the current situations. I believe it also happened in the private sector too. Okay, so what is burnout? Okay, again, burnout is not a psychiatric condition. It's an occupational phenomenon, as defined by the International Classification of Diseases in the 11 versions. So as you can see, point number 1, again, it is an occupational phenomenon. It is not classified as medical condition, but what the person is having, the burnout itself is true. Okay, so burnout is a syndrome as the result from chronic workplace stress. Okay, that person failed to manage. Okay, so usually it characterized by in 3 dimensions: feeling of energy depletion or exhaustion, and then in terms of mentally, they feel distant towards their job, or they start showing or feeling negative or cynic towards their work. And usually with these 2 factors, definitely their professionalism, their work rate, the efficacy will reduce. Okay. So, but of course, when there are people who are experiencing burnout, you can see them expressing some of the signs and symptoms as I showed in the previous slide before for the psychological distress. Okay, so what are the risk factors for burnout? Okay, in medical field, whenever a doctor look at illness, we always ask back to ourselves, what are the risk factors? Because again, in medical field, we don't want to treat it. We have to treat, that's a part of our job, but the more important thing that we want to do is prevention. So how to prevent? So we, from our perspective, we must know the risk factor so that we can change it before it happens. So for burnout, so it's studied by Ademir and Isili. Okay. This study was published back in 2013. So you can see here there are individual factors and there are also environmental factors. So individual factor, factors such as personality trait, neuroticism. Neuroticism is basically people who have anxious personality, easily anxious. So this group of people are at higher risk to experience burnout compared to those who are much calmer, much preserved. Okay, and then those who practice perfectionism, younger people. Of course, I think because older employee, they have longer working experience, they're able to adapt better in a harsh situation. So younger are affected more in terms of risk for burnout. And then in this study, it stated being single and education also play a role, regardless whether you receive high level of education or low level of education, somehow you are at risk to experience burnout. Okay, for environmental factors, again, a similar theme recur, factors such as workload, lack of control by the employee, lack of fairness, conflicting value, job insecurity, and of course, working condition, for example, overcrowding office and noisy office. This all can contribute to the risk of burnout. Okay, The third common psychological issue would be severe anxiety. Okay. All right. So for overview, anxiety is normal. It is expected, part of life. It's actually anxiety itself is a normal reaction. It's an acceptable reaction if it's correlate to the situations. Okay, because anxiety is actually part of our fight or flight system when we confronted with situation or object that might pose threat to us. Okay, that is the way our brain get the body ready to either to face the challenges or to run away. Okay, but the problem is when a person experience persistent anxiety, and this persistent and prominent anxiety eventually lead to impairment, significant impairment, causing them to have emotion, to become significantly distressed and cause impairment in their daily function or occupational or social interaction. Okay, in psychiatric, usually when we define patient as having so-called psychiatric anxiety is because the anxiety that happen out of bound. Patient experience persistent anxiety, but it does not correlate to the situation. I mean, the situation is calm, and yet patient experience, profound level of anxiety, and they feel, unable to live a good life because of the anxiety. So in this slide, the two most common that usually we encounter, the first would be generalized anxiety disorder. The hallmark would be the free-floating anxiety. A person who suffer from GAD usually will have this. The anxiety did not, in terms of the intensity, it does not as high as panic attack situation episode, but they have this feeling of uneasy throughout the daytime, throughout their daily life. So regardless what activity they are doing at that time, whether they are cooking or gardening or maybe driving a car, maybe doing some office work, but they feel unease. They feel that something is not right, something is bothering them. So this macam above average kind of like anxiety did disturb their daily function and their ability. And second one would be panic disorder. Okay, panic attack itself is a normal reaction. For example, if I'm totally calm right now and suddenly this HKL building start to shake because of unexpected earthquake, of course I will panic. That would be a normal reaction. But those who we diagnosed with panic disorder, this is because their recurrent panic attack is unexpected. It does not tally to the situation. Sometimes the panic attack happen when they are having fun watching, for example, maybe some comedy movie. They are laughing with their family, and suddenly their heart start pumping. They thought they might have some, heart attack. They become sweaty. Their hands start trembling. But if you ask any reason for you to become anxious at that point of time, most of the panic disorder patient will feel puzzled why the panic episode happened, because it does not correlate to the situation. And the other two would be social anxiety disorder. This is those who the hallmark, because the hallmark of social anxiety disorder is this intense fear of being scrutinized. People who are socially anxious, they fear that whenever they encounter another human, whenever they chit chat with another human, they have this feeling that the other person or this group of people will look at them, top to bottom, and scrutinize any part of their body. So this creates uneasy feeling. And those who suffer from social anxiety usually will develop avoidance behavior. They prefer to be alone, not talking to each other, because talking to other human will induce the anxiety. And last one is specific phobia. This is intense or irrational fear towards specific object or situation. Okay, you can, there's I think thousands types of phobia. You heard it like arachnophobia, what else, height phobia, aeroplane phobia, you name it. Okay. This type of anxiety disorder also sometimes lead to avoidance behavior, but usually specific phobia not that bad, because those who suffer from it usually will just avoid things or situations that induce their anxiety. Okay, next will be severe depression. Okay, Okay, how we psychiatrists or maybe psychologists define severe depression or what we call major depression? We use criteria as stated by our book, which is DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder. So in order for us to define a person of having major depression, we need to fulfill some criteria. The symptom need to be many and long. We usually patients who suffer from severe depression, they will have this persistent depressed mood or persistent loss of interest to do pleasurable things every day for at least more than 2 weeks. And if coupled with few more symptoms such as fatigue, insomnia, sometimes feeling hopeless, sometimes becoming suicidal, and then coupled with this symptom cause impairment, patient becomes significantly distressed. There's impairment in their daily life. You have this combination of quite a number of symptoms, long duration, and impairment occur. Because of it, we define this as major depression disorder. These are the group of patients where sometimes we start treatment, for example, with pharmacotherapy. We treat them with antidepressant, not just medication per se. Sometimes we prescribe them also with psychotherapy or supportive counseling to pull them back from their depression to their normal state, their pre-morbid state. Okay. All right. Now that's the most four commons. Okay. Again, psychological distress, burnout, anxiety, and severe depressions. Okay. So at least I hope with the information just now, you guys can detect if any of your subordinate or colleague who might have that kind of condition. Okay. So now the question, what we can do as the manager. Okay, I think this is, I credit myself. I guess the aim would be the first, we want to make the situation better for the affected subordinate or colleagues. And second, we want to improve the workplace environment so that, similar incident did not occur, especially if our colleague or our subordinate affected not because of individual factor, but environmental factors. And again, it's not wrong for us to improve ourselves as a better manager, better leader from time to time. Okay, so what are the tips to reduce stress at workplace as a manager? Okay, if let's say we found out that one or more that our subordinate are affected, emotionally distressed, maybe we can try to communicate them one-to-one rather than we have a group discussion, because not everyone not straight away open to talk about their problem. And second, we can reduce also the stress by, whenever, of course, as a manager, we will have to do some project, and we expect our subordinate to help and to achieve the goal. So, but we have to remind ourselves that whatever expectation that we have to explain it clearly so that they understand. To me, not just clearly, but the expectation also need to be reasonable. Okay, once our expectation is not reasonable, it can pose a stress to not just to them, but to ourselves also. And then if let's say we have any issue related to our office or related to our team, try as best as possible to address this issue. We must address this issue, but we address it in a positive manner. Okay, it means that we don't find someone to blame, we don't blame others. We try to be a leader that at the same time open for suggestion and so on. And then try to involve your subordinate in decision making, that will empower their confidence to feel they don't feel like they have been led by a dictator. Okay, and again, avoid unrealistic deadline. And of course, whenever our colleague or our subordinate manage to achieve something, it's not wrong. In fact, it's better for us to praise them. Maybe if you have extra, we can give them some reward, some incentive. This can cultivate that good behavior. In psychology, this is what we call positive reinforcement. When we reward a person with something, if they do the desired behavior that we expect, usually if based on experiment, positive reinforcement will increase the frequency of this desired behavior. And last but not least, if they are really severely affected and it is beyond your scope to help, we can always assist them to find treatment with the professional. But of course, we have to require their consent. You cannot force referral to psychiatric that probably able to make the situation, the relationship between us and them become much more worse. Okay, they actually themselves can do something to reduce their stress. For example, increase awareness signs of stress so that they know that I am stressed. Because some of our colleagues can be in denial when they're having problem, and this is counterproductive. Okay, and then they can learn interrupted behavior pattern. For example, as you can see on the picture, when you are tired doing job with your computer, when you cannot focus anymore, don't force yourself typing. Still few minutes to read some books. Once you're mentally okay again, then you can go back and start resume your job. Okay, of course, learning, good coping helps, and then planning definitely helps in in reducing stress, because as you can see, if you can see in the previous slide just now, one of the factors that lead to burnout, if I'm not mistaken, poor management time, poor works coordination. So planning definitely helps. Okay, so how to reduce stress level? Okay, and this is applicable if you already implement it in your life. It's good. So we use it a lot in psychiatry, in psychology, where our patient who suffer, especially who suffer from depression or anxiety, during that acute moment when they are in distress, we always encourage them to do this relaxation breathing technique. There are multiple ways on how to do it, but I opted this way. It's easier to memorize. So basically, this is the 4 seconds rule. So whenever you stress, you find a quiet place, you sit down, relax your shoulder. You can increase the effectiveness if you have like earphone, might play some mindful relaxation music at the same time, and you start practicing this deep breathing technique. So in this 4 seconds technique is very easy. First, you inhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold for another 4 seconds, and then you reduce, breathe out in 4 seconds. Okay, so basically you do this at least, if I'm not mistaken, they advise it to do 6 to 7 cycles. And if you need more, you can just continue it until you feel relaxed. Okay. Second would be anxiety grounding technique, because when we are anxious, usually our mind are so preoccupied with that problem as if we don't aware of the surrounding. So this is a form of distraction. So whenever you are in distress, if you want to perform grounding technique, you can couple this with the relaxation breathing technique just now. But then you start focusing your mind, using your senses. You distract your mind. For example, use your eye when you are very stressed out, thinking about your workload, for example, and then distract your mind. Start use your eyes. Try to find five things. Try to identify 5 different items that exist in your eye, in your field view. Okay, and then find 4 things that you can feel using your hand. If possible, try touch different surface so that you can experience the difference. Okay, and then 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So these are called grounding technique, and it is quite an effective distraction technique from in reducing distress, depression, or anxiety. Or you can use 10 langkah, we call it 10D. This is, I think, promoted by our government through the website of myhealth.gov. So the 10 langkah would be bertenang, bernafas dalam, berkata relax, it's okay, beribadat, berurut, berehat while listening to music, bersenam, beriadah bersama keluarga, and berfikiran positif. So these are the 10B easy steps that you can do also. Okay, and these are the evidence-based so-called ways to reduce stress that have some study that support the outcome. For example, exercise, as I remember, whenever I read the function of exercise in study to see whether it able to reduce depression or anxiety or even psychotic disorder, exercise in a way always helpful. Okay, so I'm not surprised it is in the list. And then apparently taking fish oil like omega-3 also help. Making diaries, laugh, avoid procrastination, listening to soothing music, and of course, down there, relaxation and deep breathing exercise. Okay, let's say you try to help your colleague or your subordinate, but they are severely affected. So we can always refer to the professional. So who are the professionals that can help? We can advise them whether they go to see this group of people themselves, or we can accompany them if they want. We can bring them to see counselor, occupational therapists. Usually occupational therapists will teach the patient how to manage their stress, how to do relaxation techniques. And then if let's say in a more severe form, the person can seek assessment and treatment from psychologists or even psychiatrists. Okay, let's say our colleague, our subordinate distressed outside of working hours. We are not there to help. There actually are few, there's a many, I just name a few NGOs or government sector that helps, that offer hotline to whoever individual that are affected mentally or psychologically. Maybe some of you are quite heard this group before, group like MMHA, which is a Malaysian Mental Health Association, Befrienders, MIASA. Now MIASA is getting traction as a famous NGO related to psychiatry or mental health. And even our government also established talian kasih, so they can contact them either through the hotline or the WhatsApp. So to our affected subordinate, we can, if they say they don't want to join, so we can advise them, okay, if you don't want me to join, but if let's say you need help and it is outside working hours and you don't want to go to the hospital, maybe you can reach this NGO, okay, for help. They offer all sorts of therapy also. Okay, how to improve yourself as a leader? Okay, I take nasihat from this psychiatrist, psychoanalyst called Dr. Prudence Gorgosians. She listed 5 core cognitive capacity and character traits that a leader must have. So first is trust. So in this sense, not just you trusting your subordinate, but you yourself must be able to inspire trust among your subordinates towards you. Okay, and then second, discipline and self-control. This in the sense of, for example, you are stressed out, so let's say you feel like you want to express your anger, you want to lash out. A good leader should have a good self-control, so you don't lash out unnecessarily, because that again will be counterproductive and it's just going to make the situation worse. And critical thinking or critical judgment, this is, some psychologists consider this is the highest level of mental function. So making decision critically is not easy. It requires experience, it requires knowledge, and it requires time and energy. But if you're able to make decision critically, usually it will turn out okay. And if it doesn't not okay also, you already have all the plan B, plan C to as a backup. Self-awareness in the sense of, as a leader, we are not perfect. We have our own weaknesses. That's why we need our colleague. That's why we need our subordinate to do certain tasks, because we ourselves are not capable to do everything by ourselves. So self-awareness, but our own weakness is important. And last but not least is empathy. Empathy is this ability to understand other person's experience and feeling. So a good leader should have a good skill of empathy, so that he or she can know. The moment they observe a subordinate, they can tell whether the subordinate is okay or not okay. Leader who have lack of empathy, usually you can see in a brutal dictator, they don't care. They don't care whether their rakyat have enough food or shelter or not. As long as they live in a big mansion, they are happy. Okay, they don't care about other people. So that is people who don't have empathy. And then again, we can implement a principle of effective communication. This is listed by this is based on WHO. Okay, so the 6 criteria needed to establish effective communication. First, accessible in the sense of the information. So as a leader, sometimes we distribute info. So the information that we want our subordinate to know must be accessible. So we don't expect them to know without we telling them in using in any way. They cannot do telepathic unless your subordinate is Professor X lah from the X-Men. If not, we have to make sure the information coming from us are accessible to them. Second, make sure that the way we want to communicate is actionable, doable. Okay, of course, when you pass information, make sure the information is credible, relevant, and it is timely. Okay, don't pass information at the wrong time, so it might be difficult for our subordinate to understand. Sorry. And of course, make sure the language that we use is understandable. Okay, so since this talk is by Dale Carnegie, I'm in no way getting extra paid for promoting this book, but I read this book myself. I think it's a good book. Taught me as a leader how to become better. So I extract some wisdom from this book that I would like to show with you guys. Okay, I think these are the wisdom that actually quite good for us as a leader, as a manager. I practice it in my current team. It seems it works. It works psychologically. It works. I found out that my staff, look happy, productive, more active than passive in doing the job. So the wisdom, the first advice is, praise are more effective than criticism. That is definitely true. Make everyone you meet feel interesting and important, because as a human, we want to belong. That's why human create society, because it is in our nature to live in society. That's why you can see people who live alone or can live alone forever, usually mentally unstable or mentally ill. Healthy people always live in a good and close-knitted community. And of course, again, we encourage others to talk, okay, and then listen carefully when they do. So as a leader, make sure the communication is not just one way. It's not just we giving orders, but sometimes take your time, lower our ego and ask them for opinion. Who knows? I experienced myself. A lot of the good idea I take and I do come from my subordinate. So we cultivate this culture, a very good one. Okay, and last one, try to understand other people's viewpoint. Of course, as a leader, we have our own view. We have to do things our way, but not 100%. Okay, sometimes our colleague or our subordinate might want to contribute your idea. So, again, lower your ego, listen to them. If, let's say, the idea is not that great, we explain it diplomatically. But if you feel that the idea is better than yours, it's not wrong to commit and credit them when things goes well. We don't take their idea and claim it for ourselves. Okay, I think that's all. Okay, so thank you for your attention. So I guess if you guys have any question, and if we have extra time, if you have time, I will answer as much question as possible. Okay, I guess I'll pass back the floor to Mr. Hari.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hafiz, for that enlightening talk. I definitely learned quite a few things.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I definitely will be applying some of it. And ladies and gentlemen, I also hope that you found this talk to be beneficial and valuable to you as well. So allow me to give you a brief summary of what we covered today. So at the start, we covered a few definitions of some key terms and also some current statistics and literature reviews. Apart from that, we also saw about the factors of occupational stress, some common psychological issues at the workplace, and also some signs of symptoms of stress, how to recognize and identify it, some risk factors for burnout, and also we learned a bit about anxiety and depression. So apart from that, we also learned how as a manager, how can we help our affected colleagues or subordinates? Ways in which our managers can help the team, what activities we can do to reduce our stress. And lastly, we also looked into how we can be a better manager or leader, and how we can improve ourselves as a leader to be able to support and guide our team or colleagues better. So these are very valuable information, and thank you so much again, Dr. Hafiz, for this information sharing it with us today.
My
So
pleasure, Hari.
yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the Q&A session, I'd like to share with you a quick update from Dale Carnegie Malaysia. So I'd like to ask all of you here today, have you ever wondered what it takes to truly be an outstanding leader? A leader who can effectively inspire and motivate your team to achieve greater results. Someone who can promote greater collaboration and innovation within your organization. Or a leader who can guide others through change and elevate their team to a higher level of performance. So these are just some of the many things that you will be able to learn in our upcoming Leadership Training for Results program. So this is our advanced leadership training program where we will cover topics such as innovation, performance management, delegation, employee engagement, and many more. So this announcement here I would like to share is that Dale Carnegie Malaysia is very pleased to announce that we will be providing a limited time promotional price, a 10% discount from the usual price of our program. So we have about, it's quite a limited time, about a week that this promotion will be going on. And these are some information about our upcoming program. It starts next month, the 5th, from 9 to 12:30 a.m. Sorry, 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Yes. And the investment fee after promotion is 4,050. The initial original price is 4,500. And this is also a HRDF claimable program. So the registration link we will share in the chat box. And this promotion ends 22nd July 2021. So you have about a week for this to take advantage of this discount that we are having. And also, if you'd like to know more information about this program, or if, for example, you're an organization which requires a bit more than a week to finalize the enrollment for this program, do contact us. Please do contact us, and we'll be happy to help you out in any way